Egypt's President Sisi and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang stresses the urgent need for a Gaza ceasefire and rapid humanitarian aid delivery. US President Donald Trump says there is a very good chance of a Gaza ceasefire this week or next. And Rome hosts a two-day Ukrainian reconstruction conference. Good afternoon. These were the headlines. Now the news in detail. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang emphasized the urgent need to establish a ceasefire in Gaza and ensure the swift delivery of humanitarian assistance to the besieged enclave. During a high-level meeting in Cairo, both leaders stressed the importance of resuming diplomatic efforts for a peaceful resolution to the ongoing conflict and called for a just, comprehensive solution to the Palestinian issue. The discussion also highlighted the close strategic partnership between Egypt and China based on mutual respect and shared interests, with both sides reaffirming the commitment to regional stability. Both leaders underscored the necessity of maintaining coordinated efforts to stabilize the Middle East, including firm support for the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Iran. Egypt's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration, Badr Abdulati, has held phone calls with his counterparts in Qatar, Jordan, Bahrain, Algeria, Oman, and Kuwait, as well as Morocco, and parts of ongoing coordination and consultation. The talks emphasized strengthening bilateral relations and joint Arab action amid current regional challenges. The ministers exchanged views on developments in Gaza, Egypt's efforts with Qatar and the United States to resume a ceasefire, release detainees, and ensure urgent humanitarian aid access. Abdulati also reviewed preparations for Egypt to host the Early Recovery and Reconstruction Conference for Gaza once a ceasefire agreement is reached, in cooperation with the Palestinian government and the United Nations. US President Donald Trump has expressed optimism about a possible ceasefire in Gaza, saying there is a very good chance an agreement could be reached this week or next. Speaking after meeting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu twice in 2 days, Trump highlighted ongoing negotiations and efforts to secure a deal to end the conflict and bring detainees home.
All of the other places that we all deal with so much, but there's a very good chance that we'll have a settlement.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel is moving closer to a 60-day ceasefire agreement with Hamas, which would involve the return of half of the living and deceased detainees. Netanyahu confirmed ongoing negotiations with US President Donald Trump and emphasized Israel's refusal to hand over humanitarian aid distribution to Hamas, citing concerns over theft and extortion. Despite progress, key issues remain unresolved, including aid across rather access and troop withdrawal, with Hamas sources denying major breakthroughs. The The European Union has announced an agreement with Israel to expand humanitarian aid access to the Gaza Strip. EU Foreign Affairs Chief Kaya Kallas said the deal will open more crossings for aid and food trucks, repair vital infrastructure, and ensure the protection of aid workers. Additional steps include reopening aid routes through Jordan and Egypt, enabling food distribution via bakeries and public kitchens, and resuming fuel deliveries for humanitarian facilities. The EU emphasized the importance of delivering aid directly to the population. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has accused Israel of committing genocide in Palestine during a speech to the parliament condemning the EU for not doing enough to stop the violence. He criticized Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's government, calling its actions one of the darkest episodes of the 21st century, and highlighted the suffering of Palestinian children. Sanchez revealed that Spain and Ireland pushed for an EU report assessing Israel's compliance with the EU-Israel Association Agreement, which found more than sufficient indications of human rights violations. He urged the EU to suspend the agreement immediately, warning that what is condemned in Ukraine cannot be tolerated in Palestine. The latest indirect talks between Hamas and Israel in Doha have so far failed to break the deadlock, with only minor progress on humanitarian aid and Israeli troop withdrawal issue. Hamas insists that aid distribution be managed by international bodies like the UN, while Israel favors the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, approved by its government. The two sides also disagree on the extent and timeline of Israeli military withdrawal from Gaza. For more analysis, we now move to Mark Summers in our newsroom. To you, Mark.
Thank you, Mona. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, we're now joined from Cairo by Ashraf El-Ashri, who is from Al Ahram newspaper, the managing editor there. Thank you very much for being with us here on Q News. So what's your assessment? Do you think we're getting closer to reaching a ceasefire agreement?
Certainly, there is an open window in the upcoming days as there are ongoing negotiations made in Washington between Netanyahu and Trump, and between Netanyahu and Witkoff, the American envoy in the Middle East. And through meeting, along with the Qataris negotiation that went to the White House 2 days before, through which there was a very turning point, which is the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from Russian Philadelphia corridors, and there is some sort of acceptance by Israel to withdraw according to the timetable. There are indications that leading to a ceasefire or a truce of 60 days, and this matter will be announced upon Witkoff's arrival to Al-Doha during the upcoming 48 hours, in order to put the final touches along with the Egyptian Qataris force in order to achieve a full ceasefire within 60 days. Provided the American guarantees, and as well as no breach by Israel, in order to address the final phases. Hence, there is a possible approachment of the ceasefire during the upcoming 20 or 48 hours.
And how much pressure do you think Trump is putting on Netanyahu over these hours and days?
Absolutely. The effect of victory achieved by Trump in the decision of the Israeli-Iranian wars, and through which calling upon Netanyahu to meet with him in Washington. According to the American report, Netanyahu, before leaving Washington, following the final meeting with Trump, in order to put the final touch of the agreement have been agreed upon regarding the ceasefire in Gaza, and there is an American agreement regarding a full ceasefire, as Netanyahu wishes to get some of the political gains regarding the political settlement in the Middle East, along with the Israeli ties with the Arab countries in the upcoming months and weeks. Hence, Trump pressuring Netanyahu by saying you have to put an end of the Gaza war in order to allow the delivery of the humanitarian aid, along with joining the Arab countries, specifically the Gulf countries, to join the Abraham Accord in reaching a peace agreement with Israel. So we found different rhetoric through Netanyahu's statement, and there is some sort of a flexibility provided regarding a peaceful settlement, and therefore Trump had succeeded somehow in order to reach some sort of agreement in Gaza. That will be a new beginning of a new ground to the peace process. And this will be rely on the Arab side in order to have a desire of establishing a Palestinian state in order to move forward and toward a peaceful solution. And the ball now is in the court of Israel.
Well, of course, one of the worries is that Netanyahu is only seeking a partial deal, and that once he gets his detainees back, then perhaps he'll go straight back to the death and destruction as we have now.
Trump has succeeded to convince Netanyahu to halt the aggressions against Gaza. Netanyahu had achieved all of the Israeli gains by eliminating the first, second, and third ranks of Hamas. Israel is controlling 75% of Gaza Strip, played a great role in destruction of the militarily capabilities of the Palestinian factions. And some goals are to be achieved by retrieving the Israeli detainees. So Netanyahu's right now, following such victories, doesn't fear of the threats of the far right wing presided by Ben-Gvir, as there is some sort of an opposition to get into in order to gain great gains in return of American political coverage of any upcoming military actions towards Iran. In addition, that such withdrawal, retrieving the bodies and detainees, that would guarantee a horizon of peaceful settlement in the Middle East through the normalization with the Arab countries. But the Gaza war was hindering to achieve such a goal. Therefore, he achieved militarily triumph with Iran and Gaza, and Trump hence will stay not only in the current government, but might lead to the upcoming government in October. And this is what it is the main focus of the unconditional withdrawal from Gaza.
And of course, you mentioned Ben-Gvir there. Is Netanyahu facing a large amount of pressure from his own government that might make it difficult to agree to a ceasefire deal?
Ben-Gvir's rhetoric aren't that affected within Israel. There are some variables took place through the Israeli war against Iran that changed the impact of Ben-Gvir threats. Even if he goes out of the government, he has only 4 seats, and Netanyahu has the rest, so he is capable to enact to take a ruling to accept or to strike a deal, and therefore Ben-Gvir is in a very hard position. Ben-Gvir will stay, and if he go out unaffected, the government and Netanyahu's presence in the U.S. will address in the upcoming deal with Hamas and to go out of Gaza through a timetable and certain peaceful approachment with the Arab countries as it is his main goal, and he's not paying too much attention with Ben-Gvir's threat. And Netanyahu has provided a lot of success to Israel, and so that's why Trump wishes to drop the charges that are facing Netanyahu, and he might make a new coalition within Israel in return to preserve its interest and to give him a great opportunity to stay in Israel in order for the U.S. to provide political coverage thanks to the good ties with Israel and the United States.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Managing editor from Al Ahram newspaper, Ashraf Al-Ashri. Thank you very much for joining us here on Qnews. And it's back to you, Mona.
Thank you so much, Mark, for the analysis. In Bulletin, and at least 55 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes across Gaza since dawn. Zahra School in the city center and another 4 near Al-Karama Towers in the northwest near the southern city of Rafah. 3 Palestinians, including a woman, were killed close to an aid center, Nasser Hospital, sources reported. Additionally, 2 people died in an Israeli strike near Al-Zahra School east of Gaza City, a compound sheltering displaced Palestinians, according to Ahli Hospital sources. A source at Al-Shifa Hospital confirmed that at least 4 Palestinians were killed in the Al-Karama neighborhood northwest of Gaza City. Philippe Lazzarini, head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugee, the UNRWA, has condemned Israel's plan to forcibly relocate Palestinians, describing it as creating massive concentration camps on the ruins of Palestinian Rafah. In a social media post titled "A Second Nakba," Lazzarini warned that this repeated displacement risks depriving Palestinians of any hope for a future in their homeland. The term Nakba refers to the 1948 ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. Lazzarini called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, stressing the need to reject such large-scale forced displacement. Israel's far-right Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, has called on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to halt negotiations with Hamas after the death of an Israeli soldier in a failed abduction attempt. Ben-Gvir criticized the ongoing talks, claiming they lead to an increase in kidnappings. He stressed that the safety of Israeli fighters and southern residents should take priority over normalization and economic agreements. He urged Netanyahu to decisively defeat Hamas and avoid risking soldiers' lives in what he called illegitimate deals. An Israeli security guard was killed and 4 others were injured in a stabbing and shooting attack by 2 Palestinians at the Rami Levi shopping center in the Gush Etzion settlements south of Bethlehem. Israeli forces responded with gunfire, injuring the attackers. The incident comes amid rising violence in the West Bank since Israel's Gaza offensive began in October 2023 with frequent clashes, raids and attacks, mostly targeting Israeli security personnel in settlements areas. Israeli occupation forces have arrested more than 50 Palestinians during raids across the occupied West Bank, according to the Palestinian Prisoners' Media Office. The operations targeted multiple locations including Nablus, Qalqiliyya, Tubas, Al-Khalil, Jenin, Bethlehem and Ramallah. Among those detained were children activists and former prisoners. The raids included searches of homes and educational institutions.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
The Lebanese Ministry of Health announced that one person was killed and 2 others were injured in an Israeli airstrike that targeted a motorcycle in the town of Al-Mansouri, southern Lebanon. It is worth noting that since the ceasefire agreement came into effect on November 27, 2024, Israel has committed over 3,000 violations, resulting in at least 233 deaths and 531 injuries. The Israeli Occupation Army announced that it had targeted a military command center used by Hezbollah in Yahmour area of southern Lebanon. In a statement, Israeli Army spokesperson Avichai Adrai said that the Israeli Army struck a Hezbollah military command center in the Yahmour area in southern Lebanon last night. UNIFIL announced that a group of individuals in civilian clothing obstructed one of its patrols during a planned mission near Wadi Jilo in southern Lebanon. The mission added that the patrol members were forced to use smoke grenades to disperse the crowd and protect themselves from harm as the Lebanese army arrived at the scene to handle the situation. The Central Bank of Lebanon has announced the implementation of a new monthly withdrawal ceiling for bank accounts, a decision that took many in the country by surprise. These restrictions aim to regulate the flow of money through Lebanese banks and stabilize the financial market amid ongoing economic challenges on the national currency as part of efforts to curb the worsening monetary crisis. Yemen's Houthis have said they launched a ballistic missile targeting Israel's Ben-Gvir airports near Tel Aviv, causing air raid sirens to sound across more than 300 towns and cities. The Israeli occupation military confirmed the missile was intercepted. The Houthis vowed to continue expanding missile strikes against military and strategic targets in Israel until the Gaza siege is lifted. They have also maintained a naval blockade and targeted shipping lanes in the Red Sea since November 2023, disrupting critical global trade routes. Yemen's Houthis group have claimed sinking the Greek-operated Liberia-flagged vessel Eternity Sea in the Red Sea. The attack, involving an unmanned boat and missiles, reportedly killed 4 crew members, rescued 6 and left 15 missing. The Houthis justified the strike, accusing the ship's operators of violating their ban on dealing with Israeli ports. This marks the second Houthi attack on maritime vessels this week after months of relative calm. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev have met in Abu Dhabi for the first formal talks since agreeing on a draft peace deal. Despite a surge in ceasefire violations earlier this year, recent calm has raised hopes for progress. Key issues including Armenia's constitution and Azerbaijan's request for a transport corridor through Armenian territory. The meeting follows recent diplomatic moves, including Pashinyan's visit to Turkey and U.S. support for the peace process. And to Syria last night, an Israeli force consisting of a tank and 2 armored personnel carriers advanced between the villages of western and eastern al-Samadiyya in the Qnews countryside of Syria. This move comes as part of ongoing Israeli incursions in the Qnews region, which have totaled around 22 incursions between June 9th and July 5th. During a meeting with several African heads of states, U.S. President Donald Trump sparked controversy by praising the English of the president of Liberia, questioning where he had learned to speak it so well, despite English being the official language of the country.
In Liberia, I would like to see that happen. We want to work with the United States in peace and security within the region because we are committed to that. And we just want to thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. And such good English, such beautiful. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Where were you educated? Where?
Yes, sir.
In Liberia.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's very interesting. It's beautiful English.
Sure.
I have people at this table can't speak nearly as well,
Very
and
good, sir.
they come from here. So thank you very much. Well, thank you. And such good English, such beautiful. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Where were you educated? Where?
Yes, sir.
In Liberia.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's very interesting. It's beautiful English.
Sure.
I have people at this table can't speak nearly as well,
Very
and
good, sir.
they come from.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has survived a non-confidence vote in the European Parliament with 360 MEPs opposing the motion and 175 supporting it. The motion, pushed mainly by far-right lawmakers led by Romanian nationalist Jorge Papiera, accused her of undermining EU trust, partly over the withheld vaccine-related text messages. This marks the first such vote against a Commission president since 2014, when Jean-Claude Juncker also survived.
Vote is.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron have announced plans for tougher migration controls. The leaders agreed to strengthen cooperation to tackle illegal migration across the Channel, aiming to disrupt criminal gangs' networks. Macron emphasized joint efforts with EU partners to dismantle trafficking routes and protect vulnerable migrants. The summit also cemented deeper defense and nuclear collaboration between the UK and France, reinforcing their role as Europe's primary military powers.
Ont en effet ouvert une nouvelle phase et l'accord politique qui est scellé aujourd'hui est...
That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we've been covering. Egypt's President Sisi and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang stressed the urgent need for a Gaza ceasefire and rapid humanitarian aid delivery. U.S. President Donald Trump says there is a very good chance of a ceasefire, the Gaza ceasefire rather, this week or next. And Rome hosts a 2-day Ukraine reconstruction conference. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews, EGY, to stay informed. Many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more coming up on Qnews.